This is video 6 of a Google Ad course that I'm putting together. If you want the other videos, you can go in the playlist below. Also, clicks to my website as well as other resources are in the description below. This is for Google Ads Build, and we're going to be talking about how to structure your campaign, ad groups, keywords, and ad copy. So let's jump over and talk about the campaign types. So there's different campaign types, search, and the purpose for this is you can do retargeting, but these are just recommendations, but cold targeting to people that haven't interacted with your brand yet. Search is the best for that because it's really high intent. For display, it's harder to get in front of cold traffic and actually see good results. So for the most part, display campaigns are going to be best for retargeting campaigns. YouTube, same thing. I would start with retargeting. However, cold you can do a little bit better than with display, in my opinion. Seems to be higher traffic with YouTube than display. So you can do a little bit of both there, but start with retargeting once again. Shopping, start with cold. It's similar to search. And Gmail, retargeting as well. And you can do cold there too, but ultimately it's easier to just do retargeting. As well as Performance Max, this is just going to hit all of the above. Performance Max is a campaign type that is fully automated or mostly automated. And so the goal is to eventually get a campaign like that down the road if you have enough data and you're feeding it enough high quality information. But start off with a search campaign, expand to retargeting on display, YouTube, Gmail, and then get to Performance Max further on down the road. So reasons to differentiate campaigns, that's what we're going to talk about here. And first is the campaign format. Is it search, is it display, YouTube, or shopping? Then is it cold or is it retargeting? So you might have a cold search campaign and then you also have a retargeting search campaign. Then targeting settings, so location targeting. So maybe it's a different location that you're doing different ads in. Maybe it's a different ad schedule. Let's say for a dentist, you have a weekend campaign in which you bid differently. The ads are different. You maybe highlight emergency services then, or you do after hours for emergency service campaign. Budget allocation. So maybe you want to allocate budget differently between the campaigns, or audiences. So maybe there's a certain campaign that has a retargeting audience versus a lead audience versus a customer list that you're using, or you're targeting certain affinity or in market audiences, you're laying those on the campaigns. Search intention, so whether they're looking for a brand, you can create a brand campaign, so they're looking for brand keywords in a search, or competitor campaigns. You can target competitor brands and target their keywords, but you can't target their text in your ad copy. Service verticals would be the most straightforward. So once again, if you have two different service verticals, such as dentistry example, once again, you have general dentistry, but then you have like a specialty like endodontics or periodontics. So you might have different campaigns for those because you're gonna allocate budget differently to those. They might have different schedules. They might have different performance, and you use different bid strategies on those. So that's why you might want to split up your campaigns. Search campaign structure example. So for property management, since property management was something that's lower intent than the short-term management, you'd probably want to split these into two different campaigns, meaning the company that we talked about would be an Airbnb rental management agency. So they're focused on short term. They don't do traditional leases. So if someone's typing in property management, they might still want a traditional lease. And with the USP we talked about, you could probably convince someone to switch from a traditional lease to a short term. But it is a switch. It's a value switch. So they're looking for just general property management, not indicating they want short term. And so an ad on that is potentially going to perform a little bit less good than someone searching for short term management. That's more specific. So split those two. You could start with the short term, and then a way that you scale your advertising is then opening up and enabling the property management campaign when you need more traffic. So alternative campaign format structure example. And so These are just the non-search campaign example for that property management campaign or account. So for property management, after your search campaigns, you'll build a display retargeting. And the different ad groups you can do here are based off of the audiences. And so you can do all website users for an ad group in which you have an audience that you're retargeting for people who came to your website from all sources, as well as you can split this from came to your website from search visitors. Since search is very similar, you can tack on both SEO and PPC search traffic. They operate very similarly. They're basically the same. So you can lump those different than direct and email and social. Engage website users, viewed 2+ pages, session duration greater than or equal to 30 seconds, played a video, etc. You can retarget a different ad group based off of that info. They're engaged rather than they just visited, so it's slightly more intent. Visited a key page, they contact page but no lead. So they went to the contact page, they didn't submit a lead. So that is even higher intent because they showed some sort of interest in actually taking action, but something turned them away in that moment. Then after that, you can add in a YouTube retargeting where you do the same thing. All website users, engaged website users, and visited key pages. And then if you want to further expand this, you could do a cold YouTube campaign where you do similar audiences for people who are on a leads list as well as people who became customers. For leads and customers, depending on how big that list is, you want like 1,000. So depending on how big that is, you could segment that as well. So you could have leads for this sort of service or leads that were ideal clients versus ones that were smaller. Also with cold YouTube, you can do channel placements as well as video placements as well. You can do audiences that aren't built off of similar audiences but just preset from the system, but they're a little bit harder to get right versus your similar audiences. Example ad groups for property management, you would just simply have property management as an ad group because there really isn't too much variance in those keywords. It's just property management company, property management services. And the only reason you would differentiate an ad group is because you want to write a different ad. But if someone is typing in those two variants of a keyword, those can just be a single ad themselves. So you don't need to make another ad group for every single variant of that keyword. You could, some people do that, but it's a little excessive and it's not necessary. Short-term management, you could do the term short-term management as an ad group. You can do vacation home rental. You can do Airbnb management, VRBO management. And you split Airbnb and VRBO, obviously, because they're different platforms and you can use that in your ad copy. However, VRBO and Airbnb are trademarked, so you can't use that in your ad copy. So you could also just do a single keyword or single ad group for all these and it would probably still work. But ultimately, splitting up your ad groups like this to write different ads and use that different copy makes sense only in some scenarios, as you can see here. Keyword match types. So we're going to give an example here, or just how to think about these. You can think about first keyword match types as split tests between your keywords. So if you're unsure, you can just do every match type, a broad, a phrase, and exact for each keyword variant that you're targeting. But if you're going to do broad, make sure to try to expand it some more. As you can see down here, you want to use more specific words for broad and as well as phrase. So instead of Airbnb management, you're going to do Airbnb property management company for your broad. Whereas you could do Airbnb management as your exact. It's still a little bit broad, but that'd work better as an exact. Just if you put it as a phrase, it would also target way too much. So you want to make the shorter ones that are less specific more exact, and the longer ones more, broad if you use those. And I mean, you might as well put as many different forms of match types in there. I still use some broad match types, and a reason why you might want to do that is if you are struggling to get enough search traffic in general, have a higher risk tolerance, and can run the campaign for a long duration. Because over time, that broad match modified still might, or the broad match might perform well. It's just in the early stages, you're going to get a lot of junk, And if you have automated bidding in place, it could optimize around that super broad term in a good way, but it's just going to take a long time to do so. These are some keyword examples for the same example we gave prior with those ad groups. I only did one ad group for the short-term management, Airbnb management. And so this top one, property management company, since property management is less intent than the short-term management campaign in general, I stayed away from even using a broad match in this because we might not want to scale that much too early anyway. So we'll keep it a little bit more specific and say property management company. And we're not going to target property management because it's just too broad, and the campaign itself isn't really specific to the service that we're offering, which is short-term management. So with these exact matches, I just do exact match sometimes for these long tails, and because you can get a little bit better quality score just because you're specifically calling out the phrase. And so over time, as you look through your search terms reports, if you see longer versions that your phrase match is pulling in that are good quality, just add them into your ad group as an exact match like you see here. Airbnb management, a little bit more complex here. Airbnb management company was, since Airbnb management is lower volume of a term, search term, then I was fine putting a term like this as broad and using broads here because it's going to struggle for volume anyways. So these are good ones to use, and I'm kind of split testing in a way because I'm also doing those longer form broads, Largo, Florida, and Near Me below that. So if the first one doesn't produce good results and is pulling in a lot of bad traffic, then maybe those even more specific ones will do better. So it's kind of like a test there. Then you have the specific Airbnb management company, Airbnb property management. The Airbnb management company is more specific, whereas the Airbnb property management doesn't indicate that. So that could also be a bad performer in which you might pause or expand down the road. And then Airbnb management at the very bottom, exact. I only do that as exact since it's like it's kind of broad, doesn't really indicate too much information in the search. So you want to keep that as specific as possible. Now, ad structure. The thing that you want to split test is H1s and H2s in the early stages. If you're doing specific split tests on H3s as well as descriptions, they have a little bit less impact into click-through rates in general. So the biggest impact is going to be H1s and H2s. And so right nowadays, all you can do is responsive search ads. So you can't do static ads anymore. And you might think that split testing is gone, but what you can do is make the same, you do a responsive search ad with pinned variables, and all you do is an H1 and H2 and H3, the two descriptions. You have everything pinned to their positions, and then you copy that and paste in another responsive search ad while changing one of the pinned headlines. So the headline 1 pin, you just change one of those headlines out, and now you have two responsive search ads which are basically the same with everything pinned, but the two like H1 pinned headlines are different in some way, and so you're testing those H1s in that way as a split test. You can also look at the asset details under the responsive search ads, and it will only show you the amount of impressions each headline is getting. So this is useful later on, but it's not a true split test because you can't see the conversions that are happening or the clicks or the click-through rates. You just see how much impressions, but you can assume that the ones that are getting the most impressions might be preferred, might be better performing in general. But what I would also do when you have these two split test responsive search ads is add in another third one. You can only have a max of 3 anyways. And this third one is like a catch-all. And you do unpinned in this, and then you put the first 2 headlines both in here, as well as their other info, the same. Everything's unpinned, and then you let that run as well. And so now you're kind of split testing, unpinning all that data against the first 2. And what you do is, over time, you look at the first 2 more static ones that are pinned, and you pause the low performer. You replace it by maybe going to Auction Insights, taking a competitor, putting in SpyFu, stealing their ads, replace it. Take that replacement headline, also put it in the unpinned as well. So now you're just adding in all the new ones into the unpinned. Eventually, with the unpinned, you can do the thing where you look at the asset details and see if your paused low performing headlines are performing worse in terms of impressions for the other ones. In that case, you can just take that out. And so now you're building an unpinned responsive ad with only winners, all your winner headlines, descriptions, etc. Hopefully that made sense without visuals. And then this would be example ad copy for Airbnb management. Short-term property management, get 25% above market rates. That 25% is great. I love having a percentage in there. I love these dash marks. This is punchy, it's accurate, it's precise, and has a clear claim in it. So you're going to get a really nice click-through rate here, as well as a nice conversion rate. I just made up a title of a property management company in this Largo space. Let's Go Largo helps you get the best ROI. So that's like the main thing we're hitting on. Their main psychographic need is ROI, profit. For your vacation home, that's a keyword. While protecting property value, that's an objection. And your peace of mind, that's an objection that we handled. No startup fee, that's an objection that we handled. You only pay us based on the value we provide. That's a unique model. Call now for questions. That's the next step. So I like adding in a next step that is pretty low investment. You could test different descriptions as well with different endings. Rather than call now for questions, you could say get a free rental analysis here, something like that. Just want to note too, once again, that I'm not using Airbnb management in the text here because this is a trademarked term. You can bid on the keyword, you just can't use that keyword in your ad text. And then you could split test this potentially by just switching out the H1 that is pinned in the first responsive one with one that has H1 pinned of vacation home rental agency rather than short-term property management. It's just a slight different phrasing. It is a keyword that we're also targeting, and you can see if one performs better than the other. Everything else is held steady. And that's it for this Google Ads structuring. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about the Google Ads setup and just talking about some things that you want to do with setting up conversions as well as settings and a couple other things. So look for that video and take care.